Aloft is an upcoming relaxing survival game with multiplayer co-op and sandbox exploration of a floating archipelago. It was one of the most played demos from the June 2024 Steam Next Fest, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this hot new survival game. Here are a few game details you probably are curious about. Aloft is preparing to set sail into early access on Steam in the fall of 2024, so in just a few months. Although the Aloft team does want to release the game onto console as well as Steam, this won't happen until closer to the 1.0 full release. You can play Aloft on Steam Deck too, and multiplayer supports up to 8 players. Note that although the demo is still available, multiplayer support will soon be removed until the early access release, so play it with your homies before it's gone. There's also an Aloft Wiki if you want to know the details of all the game mechanics, and I will put the link to the wiki in the description below. So what do you do in Aloft? Well, you must explore over 20 floating islands in search of lost knowledge that will help you craft, survive, and explore in this mysterious sky world. But it's soft survival, so you aren't punished for things like hunger and thirst, and instead gain buffs for consuming food and cooked recipes. Build a glider and take to the skies, as Aloft features a fantastic flying mechanic for exploring the islands. Or you can turn your island into an airship and take your home with you. Speaking of homes, you can build your humble abode on a main island or on your airship. There's also a massive hurricane spinning around your archipelago, holding the islands and ancient knowledge hostage. The other nemesis that you must conquer is a fungus that has infected some of the islands. Destroy the fungi and weird little fungus creatures in order to cleanse the environment and then restore the balance of the ecosystem to completely cure the island. But don't worry, if you and your friends want to focus on building or prefer more cozy gameplay, you can select either creative mode for infinite resources or peaceful mode without enemies on corrupted islands. Now let's take a look at the basic game mechanics, starting with crafting. You begin by learning how to craft a workbench, and I was expecting to open it and see the recipes I could craft, but Aloft makes you work for it. You need to experiment with various combinations of gathered resources to first learn the recipes before you can craft them. I was a bit perturbed by this, but I eventually began to enjoy the challenge, although I never figured out how to make some of the tools like a sickle, shears for the sheep, or something other than an axe for attacking the mushrooms. Some of the craftable items need to be made at the workbench, and others can be crafted in your pockets. And then there's a separate building menu for making your base. Although building felt a bit clunky at first, with pieces not always snapping easily, you're given an impressive amount of components at the start, including window openings and cute little grass roof pieces. I eventually put together a modest little base that I could call home until I figured out how to pilot an entire island. This brings us to the flying mechanic, which is how you'll begin exploring the floating islands. After learning the glider recipe on the starting island, you can craft and customize your glider and then leap to the skies. It took me a few crashes before I had a handle on flying, but once I did, it was immensely liberating and so enjoyable. As you sail the skies and explore the various islands, you'll find new resources to gather, knowledge to learn to unlock new items, and corruption to fight. Eventually, you'll find recipes for shipbuilding parts like the rudder, helm, and sails, and then you can turn a little island into your own personal airship base, which is pretty darn awesome. Things seem pretty cheerful and benign, but combat is introduced as you land on the foggy, fungus-covered islands that are filled with mushrooms to chop and weird little fungus creatures to fight, along with a central fungus spore thingy to slice and dice multiple times as it lashes its strange mushroom tentacles at you. And once you finally eradicate the shrooms, the fog lifts, but then you have to restore the ecosystem. And I had to search the Aloft Discord to learn that I needed to craft a guidebook to discover what the ecosystem lacked. I managed to fully cure one island solo with just an axe, but it was a bit stressful, especially when it got dark and I couldn't place a workbench to craft bandages, and the boss fight was pretty basic. I think I'd prefer to play on peaceful mode, at least until I discovered better weapons. And finally, we have cooking, animals, and farming. Once I discovered the cooking plate and set it on my campfire, I began to experiment with and burn new recipes. Again, you don't need to eat, but it does give you temporary buffs. I also found a little grinder on an island, and this produced grain, and I figured out how to make hay, which I fed to some sheep, but since I didn't have an airship, I couldn't bring them with me. I believe there are also goats, alpaca, and pheasants as well. You can also do a bit of farming in Aloft, though I didn't get far enough to do anything more than plant trees and a few different plant types. After playing the demo for several hours, what I enjoyed most about Aloft was the beautiful landscape, exploring the islands to discover secrets and unlock new items, and of course, the flying and the ability to turn islands into airships, complete with buildings and animals. Even playing solo, I thoroughly appreciated Aloft's creative and mostly cozy approach to open world sandbox survival. I do have a list of 4 aspects that I hope will improve before the early access release of Aloft. As I mentioned earlier, the combat was pretty basic, yet also difficult for a solo beginner, though I'm glad we have the option to turn this off with peaceful mode. Second is game performance. I didn't even have the graphics maxed, and my rather beefy PC struggled to maintain 60 FPS at 1440p resolution. Third, the character models. Oh boy. Well, as long as you don't look at their eyes, the characters are fine. But gosh, they look like they've been sampling the shrooms on the fungus islands. And finally, a bit more guidance for new players would be appreciated, even if it's just adding more details to the in-game resource guide. I felt completely lost on how to make some of the tools, how to build a ship, and that I needed to first craft a guidebook to know how to restore the ecosystems. But all of this could very well be addressed before Aloft releases into early access this fall. Hopefully it is. Overall, I'm pretty convinced that Aloft will create quite a whirlwind upon release, even in early access. It was one of the most popular demos of Steam Next Fest, has over 200,000 wish lists, and once I took the time to figure out how to play, I was totally captivated by the gameplay. The Aloft team is definitely doing a lot of things right to craft a beautiful open world survival and crafting game that has building, flying, minimal survival risks, and even a peaceful mode for cozy gamers. So I understand the hype, and I'm definitely eager to see the early access content in a few months. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Aloft. Is it worth the hype? And please drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I thank you for watching.